What's up, guys? Welcome to the Finding Hope podcast. I am so excited today because not only do we have Pixie Rose, little queen, but my sister is on this episode.
Hi guys, I'm Danae. I'm Kayla's older sister.
Had to stay older.
Just have to throw that out there. And I am very happy to be on the podcast today.
And I'm so excited because I really want her to come on because she has so much wisdom. She's lived so much more life than I have. She's lived 4 more years of life than I have, and she has made a lot of, I don't know.
Choices.
She's made a lot of choices during those 4 years that aren't identical to me. So she's got way more to say. But no, honestly, in all realness, I'm so excited she's on because today we are going to talk about body image and eating disorders. And it's so kind of her to come and have this conversation with me because she can relate to this in such a deep way. She's walked in it, walked through it, been in so many seasons of her life where this has really been a big part of who she is. And being able to come out of that is just so powerful. So thank you for being vulnerable and willing to talk.
Yes. So, I think body image is a complicated thing. And I think how we view ourselves can be tough because we're always harder on ourselves than other people are. But it's even harder if you have body dysmorphia because what you're seeing isn't necessarily real. And so it's hard to believe, even if other people are telling you, you look fine, you look normal, it's hard to believe that because what you see is not what they see. And so I think for me, like my whole eating disorder started when I was pretty young, around 12 or 13. And it started from a lot of different things. And body dysmorphia kind of, I feel like, developed from the eating disorder. I don't feel like I always had body dysmorphia. But I think definitely it's tough when it starts so young, because that's kind of like, it's hard to remember when you didn't have that. So Kayla has a lot of good questions for me, so I won't go over everything, but I see a list here.
I'm diving deep, you guys.
But yeah, I think, eating disorders and body dysmorphia can affect anybody, but it's tough, definitely tough when it starts so young.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for sharing that. And essentially, yours probably started around 12 or 13, and then you found a lot of breakthrough in it in your 20s, right? Mm-hmm. So she has a lot of different areas you've walked through in it, and walking out of it. So that's kind of where all these questions are going to stem from. That is going to lead us through just all the different ways to cope, ways to help the people that you love get through this and be supportive and encouraging in it, as well as if you're walking through this, just a lot of ways to kind of break these bonds and have power over your mind instead of it controlling you. So to start, first question is, where do you feel your body dysmorphia or disordered eating started playing a role in your life? And could you kind of see it rising up in your mind, or was it just kind of like one day you were really thrown off guard and you didn't know what was going on and it consumed you?
Well, I feel like, I don't know if I can pinpoint a time where it just like all of a sudden was like, this is when it happened, but I also don't think I was aware of it happening either. I think just, Kayla talked about this recently, but being a perfectionist, that's been me for most of my life. She
was the sister I was referencing.
I've grown a lot from there, even since she recorded that podcast. But anyways, yeah, especially when I was younger. I'm the oldest sister, and I was really a perfectionist in everything I did, and I wanted to be in control of everything, and I wanted to be the best at everything, and the best sister, the best daughter, the best ice skater. I was an ice skater at the time, and dancer, and student, everything. It just didn't end. And so when things started to feel a little bit out of control for me, it was around that time. And so I think I just really gravitated toward the fact that, there was something wrong with me, and apparently I decided it was my body. And so it was hard being in the skating world and hearing a lot of, negative comments or being compared. And, 12 or 13, you're going through puberty at that time. So it was also tough because I didn't have the best support system as far as like coaches and everything, as far as going through puberty and viewing it in a healthy way as an ice skater. So it was kind of tough, and that's when I really started getting down on myself about how I was skating and performing, and just put a lot of pressure on myself. And so I think the eating disorder, well, I know now, but even looking back then, it stemmed from just feeling out of control. And so that was the feeling that I started noticing, but then I didn't notice how bad it was getting as far as like what I was doing with my food and my exercise and all of that. So
yeah, no, that makes total sense. And the people, like you kind of referenced, the people speaking in your life weren't encouraging. And I know some of like the girls listening, I'm sure you are in some intense sport or even just in high school or middle school, and you have, boys comparing your body type, or you just have a lot of pressure on the way you look. And the comments that are made over you, no matter what age you are as a woman or as a male, but especially when your body is changing naturally and you are going through puberty, that is just so essential that you're guarding your heart and you're guarding your ears, and to have like, pray for just, I feel like, discernment in knowing what's true and what's not, because there's a lot of pressure and comments that can be made that really take effect.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think too, like, I did have a really good support system at home, but I just didn't know that I did, if that makes sense. I never really opened up about anything to anybody. I just kept everything in and just did everything I could.
It was such a fun childhood. I'm kidding.
We had great moments.
And no, I remember like we used to do everything together, like hang out 24/7. We were besties, the little sister goals. And all of a sudden, like, she hated me. And I was like, hello. And I'm still very social. I was pretty social back then too, with her, not with other people, but like with my family. And I just remember like constantly banging on her room, because we had rooms across from each other, and she would have it locked. I'd be pulling on the handle trying to unlock it. I was like, just talk to me. But so I wouldn't say I was the most patient sister. I was like 8 years old, so I didn't really understand what was happening. But yeah, no, I get that. And I feel like I relate to that too, of having a really good support system but not knowing it. And in high school for me too, I walked through different things, and same thing. I just kept it all in. I turned really angry. I turned really mean, and I didn't know how to communicate with the support system I had. Even though they were really healthy and they were a safe space, I didn't feel that, and I felt uncomfortable stepping into that.
Yes, and I do want to say I did not hate Kayla. I just isolated myself because there was so much going on in my brain. And like the eating disorder, if you are struggling with it, or if you know somebody who's struggling with it, you can see that it just kind of takes over everything. And so there wasn't much room left for anything else besides the eating disorder, and then trying to control everything else. So it took me away from really good parts of my life, like being with my sister, my friends, and stuff like that. So isolation is like a huge thing in an eating disorder, or in a lot of mental illnesses. But definitely if you can recognize that and just push yourself to get out there, it really does help.
Yeah, great advice. That kind of leads into the next question I had for you, which was, what was the hardest part about trying to control your body?
Yeah, I mean, the hardest part is really you cannot fully control anything, including your body. Yeah. I mean, you can control what you put into it, you can control how much you work out, you can control what makeup you wear, what clothes you wear, you can control all of that, but everybody's different. So you can do the exact same thing as somebody else and you're going to look different. Or things just, I mean, you just don't have complete control. And so I think that was the hardest part, but also it's easy to think that, or it's easy to have an illusion that you do have control over this area of your life as far as your body and everything, because yes, to an extent you can control a number on a scale, you can control your food, you can control whatever else it may be that's feeding into this, but at the end of the day, it's stemming from a feeling of feeling out of control of other areas of your life. And so it's easy to feel in control as far as being in an eating disorder, but really the disorder is taking control over your entire life. So you're still not in control. So it's important to just accept that and learn to know what you do have control over, because you do have control over some things, but just not everything.
That's actually a really good point. I never thought about it in that way, but yeah, what you just said about how for you the root was wanting control, and you had no idea that by giving into that desire of control in the aspect of your body, that was actually what had control over you.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's why there was just a lot of like push and pull, because there wasn't any freedom in that.
Yeah. Yeah, it starts out feeling like, you know, I mean, it's never something that you want to get into. It's not like anybody tries to have disordered eating or disordered thoughts or an eating disorder or anything like that. But once it gets a hold of you, it's really hard to break free of it. It's not impossible at all by any means, but it gets harder and harder the longer you let it feed into you in your life and everything, which again, it is like, it's nothing to feel bad about or beat yourself up about, because it, to an extent, that is out of your control. Like some people, like for instance, I also struggle with anxiety. It's not really in my control, but I can control things that make it worse.
Yeah.
And so it's not beating yourself up about it, but it's realizing that this is taking over your life. It is not it's not doing what you think it's doing.
Yeah, no, great point. And I know you touched on this with isolation.
Yeah.
But I know for me personally, and the struggles I've had in my life and still have in my life, whenever I don't talk about it and I try to keep it all in, it becomes so much worse for me. Mm-hmm. And I feel so alone, or I can feel so trapped. And for me to actually get to a point to talk about it, even like a week ago, I feel like I was in that place where I just was like, I'm just denying all these things I'm feeling. I don't want to talk about it because like, I'm better than that. Like I was in that place, and I went to a church service, and I feel like God really humbled me and was like, Kayla, I have given you the best people in your life. Like talk to them. Like every single time you do, you have breakthrough. Why aren't you talking?
Yeah.
And so I'm constantly struggling with like, I know I need to talk. I have the right people to talk to you, but I feel like maybe it's a pride thing for me. It's an embarrassment. I don't know. But for me, that's kind of where it's always a battle of like, Kayla, just talk and you're gonna feel better. And I think that's really where like the devil has me, and maybe you at times, of just trying to keep you in isolation. I feel like the devil has just so much more control over you and your mind when things are hidden, when they're in the dark, when you're isolating them, because then there isn't room for truth to be spoken in. So
Right.
how did you feel when telling people, or did you feel trapped and like you couldn't talk about it?
Yeah, so I mean, it's kind of crazy, but I am thankful now for my eating disorder getting to the point that it did, which was bad. It was really bad, because if it hadn't, I would have just been struggling silently probably for a lot longer. And so I didn't tell anybody about my eating disorder. To be honest, I didn't know I had an eating disorder. I knew like things were getting out of control, so to speak, and this wasn't where I wanted to go. But I just felt like I couldn't stop it and I couldn't talk about it.
And you were
And so
really young,
I was
too.
young, and so
And like real quick, and I mean, back like then no one really talked about this stuff. So our parents didn't even really know it was a thing. And just the resources and the knowledge and all of that, it wasn't like it is now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think you knew it was an eating disorder, but I don't think anybody really knew for a while that it was an eating disorder that you were going through.
Yeah. I mean, it was still in the beginning, thankfully. It wasn't like it was years and years that I was going through this without any support or help, but like for the first year or two it was, and then it got to a bad enough point. It wasn't even that I was like scary skinny or anything. It was just, I still looked healthy. Like I looked like I was fine and had it together and, you know, just athletic. It got to the point where I had to go to the ER because I just was damaging my body so much that it made me super sick. And so I went to the ER and they started asking questions which I had never really been asked about, like my mental health and like how was I feeling about everything, how was I doing, like how did I see myself, and you know, all these things, and started asking some questions about like, did I possibly have an eating disorder? They didn't ask me that, but they asked me questions to kind of narrow down if I did. I remember my mom was just shocked when she was hearing me say all these things about myself. From the outside looking in, it looked like, you know, I had pretty much everything together. Like everything was great. I'm doing great. I have it all. Doing well in everything.
Yeah, and like you were, like she was super functioning. It definitely didn't take away from her abilities. Like she was acing everything. She was like the top of the top in figure skating. Like she was killing it in every area.
They referred me to an eating disorder specialist doctor as well as a therapist. And eventually I got a dietitian too. And then from there, like they really started digging into what was going on and found out that I did have an eating disorder. And it didn't get just better from there. It actually got a lot worse from the outside, because then it became really noticeable. It wasn't like it was just like, oh, I was diagnosed and then it changed.
You started getting help and it actually helped you. Like you were doing everything you could to help this for years. Like I would say like around 7-8 years, like
I mean
even more. Like it was a constant battle, and you definitely would improve and you'd have, you know, better days with it, better mindset with it. But eating disorders, like I'm thankful that I was able to learn so much from you and just have more empathy when it comes to mental illnesses, because it's not a quick fix. And like for me during that time, it would be so frustrating because I didn't really understand everything that was going on. And I was just kind of like, well, why aren't you eating like you're doing, you know, I wasn't sympathetic. And it got really frustrating when it was years and years and years. And I was like, she's not getting any better. She's getting worse. Like what's going on? It was really like and my parents, they definitely were really helpful during it, but also like out of respect for your privacy, nothing was really talked about. So, and you asked them, I think you asked them, you know, like don't say anything, that type of stuff to me or my little sister. But so being on the outside of it, I was just like, I don't know what was going on. And I felt like I just had all these emotions like built up inside of me. And I was just, oh my gosh, I think I'm having a breakthrough right now.
Oh, good.
Oh, gosh. I think I'm having a break. Oh my gosh. Because, so this last week was a whirlwind for all of us involved. And there was just a lot of big family news, a lot happening in our family, a lot of life changes. And I found out the day of what some of those life changes were. And I kind of freaked out. I didn't handle it great in the moment. And I kept saying, sorry to like interrupt this conversation, but I'm just catching the audience up into my life. But I just kept saying to my parents, to Danae, to everyone around me, I just kept saying, if you told me and I was able to process it, I would be doing so much better. I hate being in the dark. I need to be able to process it. And months before this, there was another thing that happened and I had said the same thing. And then even at Christmas, we had all this happen and I said the same thing, and every time I have these mental breakdowns. I really do. And every single time I'm now learning every single time I'm saying, if I just knew what was going on and I could process it, I would be doing okay. And I actually think maybe that's where it started, because at a young age, I didn't know what was going on. And so I couldn't process anything because I was just like, I didn't know what to accept. I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't know what to think. And I didn't realize until just now that that's literally carried on through my whole life. And I think that's why I get so affected when I feel kept in the dark, because maybe that's like, it's a trigger for me.
Probably a trigger. That makes a lot of sense.
If you haven't heard it for 500 times before, please don't keep me in the dark.
Okay, to be honest, I didn't know about this stuff that happened over the weekend.
No, I know.
More in the dark than anybody. So.
No, I know.
But I will say one thing our whole family has learned through a lot of stuff to do with me actually, because I'm highly sensitive, so I get affected really easily. And I've learned how to manage it a lot better. But I had a lot of things happen to me that were out of my control, and then a lot of things that I let affect me that were more in my control. And so our whole family has learned a lot, and grown a lot as a family, and learned how to communicate from all of us girls and everything.
Yeah, but we're all sisters, so my dad hears a lot.
Yes, but also, like, sometimes when one family member is going through something, people don't realize that it affects the entire family, and it really does. Like, whether it's depression, anxiety, a traumatic event, it doesn't have to happen to everybody, or an eating disorder, but it will affect your family and your close circle, because these people care about you, and so whether you like it or not, what you're going through will affect them. And it's not your responsibility at all to deal with it or manage their emotions, but it is important, I would say, like, to parents at least, to acknowledge this. And, like, the person going through this trauma they're not the only ones who need help. Like, the whole family needs help in one way or another, whether it's therapy, learning how to communicate better, like, everybody needs to feel supported.
Yeah.
You have to take care of yourself first and foremost. And by taking care of yourself, that also has a ripple effect on everybody around you, because you'll be able to be a better sister, a better brother, whatever it is, better friend, better girlfriend, boyfriend, partner, anything like that, even in work or school. The more you work on yourself, the better it is for you, obviously, but then everybody around you too. But I would say, like, if you are somebody who is getting affected by this, with somebody in your life who's struggling with an eating disorder, recognize that, and definitely take care of yourself too, because you probably, when I was going through an eating disorder, nobody could get through to me to just change what I was doing, because it's not a decision, it's a disorder. It's something that takes over your brain, and so you really need professional help and a lot of patience and time to really get through that. But somebody just trying to come in and fix it isn't going to do it. So just make sure you take care of yourself also in the process.
Yeah. And then what would you say to somebody who is a friend listening and has somebody walking through this, or a family member walking through this, and they're not struggling with it on their own, but they're watching somebody they love go through it? What would you say is to them is like what they can do, or how to help and how to take care of them, like their self during the process?
Yeah, if you're somebody, a family member or friend that has somebody in your life that's struggling with an eating disorder or body dysmorphia or anything disordered eating along those lines, then I would say the most important thing is to not start to identify them with the eating disorder or what they're going through. Like, that is not their identity. Good. That's not even part of their identity. It's something that they're struggling with, but it's not who they are. And I think it's huge to be able to remind them of who they actually are, because it's so easy to get lost just in your eating disorder when you're in it and kind of just forget who you are. I completely lost my identity when I was going through my eating disorder, because it just took over. And it wasn't even because I didn't have people to remind me. It's just that I was something else other than the eating disorder. It's so consuming. And so just having a voice, if you can be that voice to remind them of all the other wonderful things and stuff that they do and who they are that makes them besides this eating disorder, I think that's huge. And then I would also say, like, just don't, it never helps to comment on somebody's appearance who is going through that. Anything
Even
is
if
bad.
you're not going through that, don't comment on
Don't
weight.
comment on appearance, because, I mean, you can say what you think is nice to somebody, like, oh, you look thin, and that's just going to encourage the eating disorder. Or if you say you look healthy, some people will twist that and take it weird. Or obviously, you know, if you comment on somebody being too heavy, that never is going to be taken well. So just don't comment on appearance at all. Like, just avoid that in general, unless it's like, I love your smile today or something like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, anybody's weight should not be up for discussion, period, honestly. And no matter what your weight is, that's between you, and then if it needs to be your doctor. But other than that, it does not need to be up for discussion. And same with food choices. I mean, they're doing the best that they can if they're in recovery already with their food, and it's not your job to try to tell them what to eat, or they'll be fine if they eat a burger or something like that. So just trust that they're going through it the best they can, that their team is helping them, and just be a support. And if they're not getting recovery, or not in recovery, they're not getting support, then just, you know, be open and be a safe person that they can come to and talk about it. So then maybe you can give them some resources.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah. And I would say too, like, being that person on the other end of it, to take the pressure off of yourself, because I know I would feel a massive weight because I wanted to fix it, and I thought I could help fix it. And I don't think really there was anything I could have done to change the way you were thinking or change the way you viewed yourself. And besides just being encouraging of who you are and being a safe place, but to take that pressure off of yourself of, like, that is their battle and you can't fight that for them. And that's where I feel like I didn't love you in the best way possible, because I was trying to fight your battle. And then I also wasn't loving myself in the best way possible because I was putting all this pressure on to fight a battle that wasn't mine.
Yeah, definitely. Mm-mm. I would agree with that 100%.
Out of everything you did, what would you say was the most helpful for you?
So, again, like, it was years before I truly felt like I was recovered from the eating disorder. And I walked through many stages of it. Eating disorders are they're not just one size fits all. Like, there's so many different versions of it. You can have disordered eating, you can have anorexia, you can have bulimia, you can have binge eating disorder, and there's many more.
Yeah.
And so I went through a lot of all of those. Some longer than others, but I think the most helpful thing for me, I was in therapy the entire time. I was with the doctor the entire time, with a dietitian the entire time, for all those years. And I think consistency was probably the most helpful thing for me, because it's not a quick fix. I mean, it can be. God does miracles every day, but it's not guaranteed to be a quick fix. So just even if you feel discouraged and like, it's not working, it's not getting better, I'm still struggling, then, like, don't worry, because you're still doing something right if you're still fighting against it. And eventually you will overcome it. I really believe that.
Oh, for sure. And even, like, I know we're really talking about eating disorders, but even just as, like, a woman, I mean, I'm sure most of us walk through viewing our body in a negative way or different things. So it doesn't even have to be to the point where you're at an eating disorder. But this, like, conversation, I feel like still definitely applies to just being a woman in general and the different things that run through our mind or can take hold of us. And also just being very aware and careful of those thoughts that are entering your head and just captivating them right away and knowing that that's not true, being able to decipher that before it continues and you start believing those lies.
So my therapist had me name the voice in my head that was this eating disorder. And I named it Ed. A lot of people who are in recovery do this, but you can name it anything you want. And it's so important to separate that voice from your actual voice and what is real. And so I would literally write down like what Ed was saying to me and write it down and bring it in to discuss, because it was just on constant repeat.
Wow.
So having that to like say, okay, this is not me. This is something else that's trying to destroy me and destroy my life was really helpful. And then whatever faith you have, if you have faith, if you believe in something, for me, having God as the other voice in there, even when I couldn't find my own voice, of being able to be like, what does God say about me? That was super helpful. So
yeah. No, that's huge. How did you learn to love your body and be able to appreciate it, or get to the point where you feel like, okay, like these thoughts are slowly dying out. I love my body. I'm thankful for it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, eating disorders usually aren't just about weight and body image and appearance. They're usually stemming from some other source. So I think it's super important to figure out what that source is and try to just go right to that source and work on that too, because that will help with everything else, because you're confronting like the main issue.
Yeah.
But I think, and that did help me learn to love and accept and appreciate my body, because it wasn't the main focus of my life. Like if something is the main focus of anything, you're always going to find something wrong with it. So
100%.
I think that was huge, but also you do have to get to a point where you can accept your body and love it for what it is. And that doesn't mean you have to love every single part of yourself completely and just be like, everything is perfect about me, because I mean, we all are perfect in God's eyes. We're all beautifully and wonderfully made. But the reality is nobody's perfect. And so we're all going to have something that we don't love about ourselves. But there are a lot of things you can find to love. And for me, I had to do, from therapy, I was told to just write down one thing every day. And if I couldn't do it every day, like every month, and I would focus on that one thing that I could love or appreciate about my body. And it didn't have to be appearance based. It could be like a function. So like I could love my eyes because they allow me to see everybody around me that I love and, you know, fully enjoy life in that way. Or if it was appearance, it could be like, oh, I love my smile because when other people see it, it makes them happy too. But it can be anything as small as and weird as like, I love my right eyebrow. You can love anything about your body. And the more that you learn to appreciate every little thing, the easier it gets. But also give yourself grace and do not expect to just love everything about yourself, because the reality is nobody loves every single thing about themselves, whether it's appearance, personality, whatever it is. Like, we all want to work on being better. But as long as you're not letting it overtake you and you're more positive in the way that you view yourself, it's it's fine. Like, you don't have to be perfect at loving yourself either.
No, and I'll go through that. Like, some weeks I'm like, wow, I look so hot. And then like Danae will talk to me 2 days later and I'm just like going off and on and on and on. And she's like, Kayla, bring it back in. I'm like, I'm aware. And I'll like tell myself, like, I feel like I'm very aware of like, I know I probably look fine, but no, I don't feel fine. I don't like these things about my body today. Maybe in 2 days, I'll absolutely love these things about my body. But that's just like, I do think that's normal. And something that's helped me a lot is because I wouldn't say I had an eating disorder or anything like that, but I grew up with food being so taboo. Or just there was so much around food. And so like I've definitely had my own journey with having a healthy relationship with food, having a healthy relationship with my body, like all these different things, and not being obsessive. Because I feel like I learned at a young age of like, oh, it's okay to be obsessive about things. And I feel like what's been really helpful for me, just being like a girl in general, because like I said, I feel like girls, like, we do struggle with a lot of like the way we look and the way our body is a lot, whether it is to an eating disorder point or it's just like it's a normal amount that doesn't consume your mind. But something that like always helps kind of ground me and like reel me back in is if my body is functioning at the best it possibly can. And so if that means like I'm eating too much, I'm eating the wrong things where I feel tired, I feel exhausted, I'm mad at myself for the way I ate or things like that, then that's probably not a good way of eating. But then if I'm also depriving my body of nutrients, I'm depriving my body of food, I'm not giving my mind the fuel that it needs in the foods I'm eating, then again, it's the same outcome. I'm tired. I don't have the energy. My brain isn't functioning at the way it could. I'm not able to exercise at the way that I could. And so a good gauge for me and body image and what's like a good relationship with food for me is I want to be able to operate in the best way that I possibly can. And that's mentally, that's physically, that's so many different things, because what I'm putting in me, it should enhance all of my capabilities in my mind.
Yeah.
And so that's like, for me, that's kind of my like guiding little light.
Yeah, and that's really good, especially when you do get to like a recovered place, for sure. And even in recovery, but I would say too, like in recovery, it's important like to just, you can't listen to your body necessarily when you're in recovery, so you do have to learn to listen to what other people are telling you is best, because your body has gotten to a point of just surviving. And so it doesn't know exactly what it needs, and it's harder to follow like what is making me feel good or bad, because it's just so out of whack at that point.
That's true.
So when you're in recovery, like if you have a dietitian, anything like that, like listen to them, because they know this, they've studied this, they know what's best for your body. And it's really hard to do. It's hard to give that up, like that control up, but definitely it gets you to a much better point. And then your body will start to know what it needs again, and we'll go back into that natural pattern. And like sometimes everybody's different. Like what is best for Kayla's body is not always
so
best
different.
For mine. Like
No.
we eat very different.
Very different. Very different.
Yeah, and like we're both healthy though, and
Yeah.
like, in different ways. And sometimes you need to eat something that's great for your mind and your soul, but it might not be the healthiest choice. But it is actually the healthiest choice for you, because you're taking care of your body still in some way. And sometimes you might need to eat something really healthy because you might be trying to get over a sickness or something, or anything like that. But it's important to not just box yourself into like this one size fits all eating either.
I would say too, like with that point, make sure the person that you're like, to be able, I feel like, to be in that place where you're gonna release that control, you're gonna trust somebody with what they know your body is going to need. For your benefit too, I feel like make sure that person is educated. Like if your sister, if your mom, if your friend is saying like, oh, this is good, you need to be eating this, you should be eating this, you're not going to trust that. Like they don't know your body, they haven't studied. That's going to be so much harder to trust. And then if you do trust that and you don't like that outcome, then it's going to be really scary to trust anyone else.
Right.
So just be careful about the people speaking into your life. And when you do let people speak into your life, acknowledge that, okay, I will trust you. I'm making this agreement, like in my mind, like you can have this say, and I will lean into that.
Yeah, with any kind of help you get, since we're talking about eating disorders, I'll focus on that, but make sure you go to a therapist who specializes in eating disorders. Make sure you go to an actual dietitian who specializes in eating disorders. Go to a doctor who has experience, because I've had a lot of people, even professionals, that were supposed to be helpful and ended up being way more hurtful in the long run. So just make sure you go to a reputable person for these things, because that will definitely help a lot.
Yeah, for sure. And then where are you currently at with body image? And then also, because it's where you're currently at, my sister is pregnant. She's got the most beautiful little girl growing inside of her.
Yes,
But I know
yes.
with that, like we've talked, and for lots of years, like I know body image hasn't really been a big thing for you, but now that you're kind of back where your body is changing, like it was when you were in puberty, and it's changing for all of the best reasons possible. Like it's all healthy, it's all good, it's all needed, but it's changing. How, like, where are you currently at with that? And, what are your thoughts, I guess?
Yeah, so it's a really good question because like Kayla said, I worked my butt off and
She did.
had an amazing team to get to a point of really where I would consider myself to be fully recovered. And being fully recovered doesn't mean you never have like an occasional thought or something, but it's just you don't act on that and it's not consuming your life.
Yeah.
And so I was in that point for a while. I'd say probably like 5 years.
Yeah, for sure.
And I really I was thriving.
She was eating whatever she wanted to eat. She was doing anything she wanted to do. She was just a lot healthier in general, just so much of a happier human, and I feel like you were very free. It didn't have a hold of you.
Yeah, not at all. I felt super free in that aspect of my life, and it really is true. I just want to reinforce, trust the people who are around you that are supporting you, who are professionals, because it is true that your body does have a set weight that it is most comfortable at, and it is the healthiest for you. And I had struggled so long trying to control where I was at with the eating disorder and all of that. And once I really learned to just listen to my body and eat what I wanted when I wanted, in moderation, of course, but just listen to my body as far as exercise and everything goes, I did not have to try at all to maintain my weight. And I was really healthy in that place. And it wasn't my weight, once I had recovered, it kind of yo-yoed back and forth because, I was still going through a lot of changes. My body had to reset. But once it got to that set point, it pretty much stayed there without any effort. And I felt good about myself as far as my body looked and everything, but it wasn't a main focus of my life. And so
now where do you feel like you are?
Yeah, so now I am 23 weeks pregnant as we're doing this podcast. So a lot has changed in my body.
A lot has changed. She's got the cute little baby bump.
Yes, and it is completely out of my control in that sense. Yes, I'm doing my best to give my body and my baby nutritious food to grow and to listen to those pregnancy cravings too sometimes, and to give myself grace for how my body's changing. But I will say I was hit with a lot of same thoughts that I used to struggle with initially, because it's just that same feeling of being completely out of control. And I even talked to Kayla a little bit about it, this is honestly really hard, because now it's not I can just do whatever and everything stays the same. Now, even if I were to try to just be super conscientious of every little thing I put in my body's still going to change.
It's still changing,
because there's a baby growing inside me. And so I would say I'm still doing really well with everything, because I do have thoughts occasionally, they will come up, but I don't let them change my behaviors of how I'm caring for myself or for this baby. And it is that point again of learning what to love about myself and my body, because right now it's hard to love everything when everything's constantly changing. It's not just a baby bump. A lot changes when you're going through this pregnancy process, and I've really had to learn that. But it's all good and it's all healthy. And I think for me, what's made it easier is just realizing this isn't a forever thing, and this is what needs to happen to have the healthiest, happiest baby possible, and that's my main priority. And so taking the focus off myself really helps. But also, I do appreciate it. I have learned to love my baby bump. I do think it's cute now. First,
adorable.
I don't think so.
Adorable.
But I've learned to love the changing aspects of my body and realize it's super cool. It's a miracle going on inside me right now. So
yeah, and and too, beforehand when your body was changing, you didn't really have anyone to talk to. And even now, like, I'm really impressed with you because when you have had some thoughts or you are struggling, like, you do tell me, you're honest. And I think that's really just pivotal in general. And it, again, like, you're letting me speak truth into it. You're letting the people around you speak truth into it when those thoughts come up or when you're feeling a certain way. And maybe you don't believe what we say, but it's another voice bringing light into the situation or into what you're thinking. Oh my gosh, she's so cute. She's my child. She's my little baby.
But yes, I do want to say that's huge. Like, now I have my safe people that I can talk to about this stuff. And they'll be a voice of reason. Even though I know deep down I'm probably, like, what I'm feeling isn't accurate, it's still nice to have another person that knows me really well and knows my entire journey of what I've been through, to just remind me, like, no, it's fine, Danae. You're going to be fine. You're healthy. Like, this is good right now. This is good. It's not a bad thing. So
Yeah. And it's just so cool, like, how your body, it's creating another human. Like,
I know.
That's insane. Like, yeah, there's changes. Yeah, there's whatever, but you're creating life. Like, that's wild.
Yeah.
So
it is.
Yeah, encouraging you in that like, it's a full-on miracle going on inside of you. And
yeah.
And I would let anything change to have little Pixie Rose.
I know. And that's, I mean, it might not relate to everybody if you're pregnant and you're struggling with an eating disorder, but for me, I always wanted to be a mom so badly. Like, that was my huge dream.
Yeah.
And, like, you know, I did well in my career and everything else, but, like,
that's where your heart is.
Where my heart was being a really good mom, and I just really wanted to have a baby. And that was another thing that actually got me out of the eating disorder, is because it got to where I lost my period, and when you lose your period for a really long time, it lowers your chances of being able to have kids. And so this baby is honestly a miracle.
Full-on miracle.
Full-on miracle. So,
praise the Lord.
So I'm really grateful for that, and reminding myself, like, this has been my dream and now I'm living it. It really does help me stay the course of being in recovery and being recovered, because, like I said, that was one of the main reasons that really, like, snapped me out of everything I was going through, because I was like, I can't let this take away, like, what I've always wanted to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so yeah, like, even if your dream isn't to be a mom and you are pregnant, or if that was not your reason that really forced you into recovery, like, I would still encourage you to just realize your body is amazing. Like, it's doing so much. It's literally creating and taking care of another human being inside of you. And
cool.
So, I mean, just treasure that and really appreciate your body for that. Surround yourself with people who understand and who can support you, especially when you're struggling, even if you're recovered. Like, surround yourself with people who aren't gonna misunderstand you or make you feel bad. Like, people who know you are really important to be around, who actually know who you are during these times. So
yeah, for sure. And then the last thing is, did God play a role in healing your mind and getting you to a healthy place in your life?
Yeah.
Do you feel like that was helpful? Because I know you had gone in and out kind of during a lot of your walk.
Yeah, I mean,
with it.
More of it was in and out with the church due to some other traumatic experiences, but I will definitely say God played a huge role in just being the healthy voice in my head. And even when I wasn't leaning into Him or relying on Him, like, He was always there, and He did definitely, like, play a huge role in my recovery, because, I mean, for me, my faith is huge, especially now, but even when it wasn't at times, God was always there. And I think all the prayers that everybody said too played a huge role of just getting me to a recovered place. But yeah, I mean, like I said, God can do miracles, like, in a second and change everything, but He also gives us so many tools that we can use. So even if it's not an immediate change, like, He's there. He's still giving you the people, the resources, the strength. Exactly. But yeah, definitely the main thing I want to say on all of this is that recovery is definitely possible, because a lot of people, even therapists, will tell you that it's not possible to be fully recovered. And
what a horrible way to say it.
I had a lot of therapists tell me that, and then I started reading some books and found a therapist, well, a couple of them, that were like, no, this is completely, like, you're completely capable of recovering from this fully. And they both had actually gone through eating disorders themselves, and they were completely recovered and now helping people with them in such a powerful way.
Dramatic advice.
Realize, like, this is not you, and you can definitely overcome this.
For sure. Well, thank you guys so much for listening. I hope this was really helpful, and thank you so much, Danae, for being so honest and vulnerable. I asked a lot of these questions I didn't really know myself, honestly. And so thank you for just being so real and so open about every aspect that you've walked through with this. And I pray that it provides a lot of hope and clarity for you guys listening, whether you're going through it, whether you know somebody going through it, or whether just in general, you know, body image is such a big thing in our culture today. And I want to just say that no matter where you are in the way you view your body, or in the foods you're eating, in the way you're exercising, any of that, like you said, that is not your identity. Like, who you are is your heart, and all of the external, anything that is fleeting, that comes and goes, change is inevitable, and there's so much more to you, and all of you guys are just so purposeful and so beautiful and have so much more to who you are than your external capabilities or physical appearances. Yeah. So I hope you feel encouraged, and I hope this provided some help or just some different insight, really being able to look so crystal clearly into somebody that's walked through this. But we love you guys. If you're listening, please leave a comment, leave a review. And if you're watching, which you should, because Pixie Rose is in it and she's just the cutest thing. Hold on. We love you. I love you. Thanks for being on. Yes. And I'll talk to you next week.